Hey everyone, welcome to my introduction to Blender tutorial. In this tutorial, I will be going over some very basic things inside Blender to help you get familiarized with Blender and its interface to help you get started with 3D modeling. So, before I begin, I do want to point out the importance of using a 3D a 3-button mouse. Um, if you want to be serious about 3D modeling, you should really use a 3-button mouse. If you don't have one, I highly suggest you go out and buy one and use it. You really don't want to be using a trackpad or a 2-button mouse. A 3-button mouse is really the way to go. It's really the tool that's the best tool to use for 3D modeling. So I'm using Blender 2.68a. It is the latest version on Blender's website. I'm using Windows 7. I'm pretty sure what applies here also applies to the Mac and Linux versions. So before we start, there are two controls that I want to focus on primarily, mainly because I changed my controls to reflect that of Blender 2.49. So I will go over the controls, the default controls for two controls, the rotate control and the move view or pan control. I'll go over those controls for 2.68a, and then I'll change my default controls to reflect that of 2.49. So feel free to try both out and see which one you like, but I prefer to use 2.49. I feel that it's easier. So the first control I will go over is the rotate control. So by default in Blender 2.68, the rotate control is accomplished by middle mouse click and drag. So if I want to rotate the scene, I just middle mouse click and drag. Very simple. So if I want to move the view or pan, this is the second control. If I want to pan the scene, I do shift and then middle mouse click and drag. Very simple. So to go over those last two controls, if I want to rotate the scene, I just middle mouse click drag. If I want to pan the scene, I just do shift middle mouse click drag. So if you're comfortable with those controls, go ahead and leave those. If you want to try my controls, the ones that reflect Blender 2.49, then follow me. Like I said, if you want to keep these basic controls, don't do what I'm about to do. But I'm going to change mine. Well, regardless of whether you want to try 2.68 or 2.49 controls for rotating and moving view, there's one thing I want to point out, which is the emulating numpad option. So I'm on my laptop right now, so I don't have a numpad. So if you don't have a numpad, you really do want to check this emulate numpad option right here. So let me go over that again. So if you want to emulate the numpad, which is primarily used for changing the view, like front view, side view, top view, stuff like that. To emulate numpad, go to File, User Preferences, Input, go to the Input tab, and select Emulate Numpad. Then you want to save user settings. By clicking Save User Settings, it will save the default key configuration. So every single time you start up Blender, you won't have to go into user preferences and select emulate numpad. So be sure to press save user settings. Okay, so now I'm going to change my rotate and move view controls. Like I said, if you're comfortable with 2.68 controls for those two, don't do this. But if you want to try 2.49, then follow me. Okay, so rotate and move view. If I want to change the controls for those two, I go to 3D view right here. Then I want to go to 3D view global, and you'll see these two right here, rotate view and move view. So by default it's middle mouse and shift middle mouse. I'm going to change mine for rotate view first. So instead of middle mouse, the way it was done in 2.49 was alt left mouse. So I just click it, and I'll do alt left mouse. For move view, the way it was done inside Blender 2.49, it was shift alt left mouse. So move view, I'm going to press shift alt left mouse. and then I'm going to save those user settings because that's going to be my default. So this is how it's done inside Blender 2.49. It's just more comfortable for me. Choose whichever one you like. If you like 2.68, go back and change it to the middle mouse or shift middle mouse. But if you want it to reflect Blender 2.49, which is the old way of doing it, it's Alt left mouse and Shift Alt left mouse. So it's under File, User Preferences, Input, 3D View Global, Rotate View, and Move View. Those are the only two controls that I change. Okay, so now that we have that, let me go and start the new file. And now that I've saved my user settings, my controls are still the same, and I can still emulate the numpad. So let me start up a new one so I have that default scene. So to point a couple things out, you have your default cube right here. You also have this lamp right here, and you have your camera. If you want to select the different objects, just right-click the objects. Okay, so let's go over some basic controls. So hopefully you're using a 3-button mouse. If you are, to zoom in and zoom out, you just use the scroll wheel. I already went over rotate, scene, and move view, but I'll go over those again. If you're using 2.68, it's just middle mouse click and drag. To pan, it's shift middle mouse click and drag. I'm using 2.49, so mine's different. So rotating scene, panning the scene. So let's say we want to delete something. Let's say I want to delete this cube. What I would do is I would select it, and you can tell an object is selected if it's orange, if it has that orange outline. If I want to delete it, I just press X, delete, and that deletes an object. I can also do it with the camera and the lamp. Any object can be deleted. And of course, to undo it, just Control Z, Control Z. So I want my lamp, camera, and cube back. So just Control Z to undo those. That's just that was just there to illustrate the deleting option. So you'll notice this Object Tools shelf or toolbar here. To turn that on and off is the T button. We'll go over some of these later, probably in other tutorials. I don't think I'll go over any of these in this tutorial. But to turn this, to toggle this on and off, you can press T. You can also press this plus sign right here. You'll also see another plus sign right over here. To turn this one on and off is the N button. And that's for the transform. So Object Tool Shelf, press T. Transform Tool Shelf, press N. Okay, so grab. Let's say we want to grab this cube and move it around. If we want to grab it, first we select it with the right mouse button. We're in object mode. Grabbing is accomplished by pressing the G key. So with that cube selected, press the G key, and I can move my mouse around, grab it, and move it wherever I want. If I decide I don't want to move it, I want to keep it back in that the position it was just in, I just right click and it'll go right back. It'll snap back to its original position. If I want to move it to a new location, I left click and it'll move it there. And of course, if I want to set it back to its original position, well, if I want to undo that move, Control Z. Okay, so that was grabbing. Now rotate. Rotating is accomplished by using the R key. So if I want to rotate this cube, let's select it, make sure you have that orange glow, that orange outline around it. If I want to rotate, just press the R key and move your mouse around. You'll see that you can now rotate it. Very simple. So to go over those last two, grab with the G key, rotate with the R key. More on that later, but let's go and continue. Let's say I want to hide an object. Let's say I have a lot of objects in my scene and I want to hide some to free up some viewing space, I guess. To hide an object, you just press the H key, so H. The object is still there, it's just hidden from view. I can do the same thing with the lamp and the camera with the H key, H for hide. So let's say you want to bring it back up. If you want to bring back an object that's hidden, just press Alt H and it'll bring up all hidden objects. So let me go over that again. If I want to hide this cube, I just press H for hide. If I want to bring it back up, Alt H. Okay. So let's say I want to render a picture. This is my camera, and my camera is going to show me what the camera is actually looking at. So if I want to go to the camera view, I'm going to press 0. It'll go to the camera and show you what the camera is seeing. So if I want to render this scene, render what my camera is seeing, I press F12. Give it a second and it'll show you the rendered scene. So I only have that cube in there. I also have that light coming in from the side. So press 0 to go to camera view, then press F12 to render that scene. So press escape and just rotate out to get away from the camera view. Okay, so now it's time to go over a little bit of the interface. Right now we have two windows. This is my 3D viewport and this is my timeline viewport. For the most part, I'll be working inside a 3D viewport. The timeline viewport is typically used for animation. Right now I'm not going to be going over animation, so let's go ahead and change this view. So if I want to change the window type or the viewport type, I press this button right here and I select the kind I want. So it was originally on timeline, but I'm going to change it to 3D view. So pretty simple, just click this button, select your viewport type. For this tutorial we'll basically just be using 3D viewport. So another thing that I can do with these windows is I can actually split them up or join them together. So if I want to split these windows up, I just take my mouse and go to the border until I see the double arrow, right click, you'll see the area options come up. I can go to split area or join area. I want to split area. I want to split the bottom window into two. I'll click split area and you'll see this line come up. And wherever I click, it'll split it into two. So I like to put mine in the middle. So click, and now I have two windows. So let me get rid of the object tool shelf and the transform tool shelf by pressing T and N. Make sure your mouse is in this window. If I press T and N while I'm in this window, right now the object tool shelf and the transform tool shelf isn't up. Because my mouse is in this window, it'll pull it up because it's not there. So the position of your mouse is very important. So let me turn off these tool shelves, pressing T and N. So now I want to split up my top window. So I'm going to do the same thing, split area, go to the top, click. So now I have 4 different views for the 3D viewport. And like I said, you can always change the different types of viewports, but for this tutorial I'll just be using the 3D view. So joining viewports, you can also join, just click the edge, join area, and then choose which direction you want to join. So if I want to join the top left window with the top right window, I just right click the border, select join area, and then click over here and it joins it. Same thing with the bottom, join area, bam. Another useful key is shift space. If I want to only work inside this window but not get rid of this window, I put my mouse into this window and then press shift space bar and it'll focus only on this window. If I want to go back to my 2 windows, I just press shift space bar. So like I said, position of your mouse is very important. If I want to focus on the top one, shift space bar to get back. If I want to focus on the bottom, put my mouse in the bottom window, shift space bar, and to get back, shift space bar. So same things apply. If I focus, I can still bring out my object tool shelf and my transform tool shelf, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So let me get back out with shift spacebar. So select this cube. We'll be going over some manipulators now. Let me focus on one window, shift spacebar. And you'll see the blue, green, and red transform axis there. Blue is typically for the Z, green I believe is Y, and red is X. That just corresponds to different, it's basically a coordinate system. So let's go over the transform manipulators. And by default, you have the movement, which is like the arrow kind right here. So I can click the blue arrow if I want to move it straight up. I can click it and move it straight up. So let me also point this out. You can see the location of the cube right now at 0, 0, 0. If I grab the blue arrow, you'll see the Z value right here go up as I move it up. And I can manually set it back to 0 by just putting in 0. Same thing applies with Y. Same thing applies with X. So after the movement manipulator, we also have the rotation manipulator right here, this middle one. With this one, we can actually affect the rotation. So we just grab one of the colored lines and we can rotate it. And you can see that the rotation changes over here as well. So let me undo it. Very simple. So the last one is the scaling manipulator, this last one. By clicking that and choosing one of the colored lines, we can actually scale the object. And you can see the scale also changes right here. By default, it's always at 1, 1, 1. But if we can manually change it using the scale manipulator. And we can also do it manually. So if I want to scale it up, if I want to scale it to be 4 by 4 by 4, you just type in 4, 4, 4. And it'll be the same cube except it's 4 times its size. So I'm going to keep it at 1 though. Okay, so let's say you're working and for some reason you lose yourself. You don't know where your objects are at. This has happened to me a couple of times. If you want to go back and find your scene objects, just press Shift C and it'll find your objects. So let's say you're lost, just press Shift C and it'll find your objects. Let me illustrate this. If you only have one object and you press Shift C, it'll focus on that one object. If you have multiple objects, it'll try to focus on the center. So switch back to the movement manipulator. Select the cube. If you want to have multiple manipulators set up, you can shift click and you can have whatever combination you'd like. Typically, I just keep the movement manipulator on, but if you want to have multiple ones, you can just press shift click and choose whichever ones you'd like, whatever combination you like. Okay, display types. So right now we're in object mode, we're in solid mode. You can press Z to go to clear wireframe mode. You can press Z again to go back to solid mode. You can also use this button right here, the viewport shading. Typically, I just use texture, solid, and wireframe. Wireframe, texture. We'll go over that once I go over some texturing. Once we start putting images and colors on an object, this is the viewport shading you'd probably want to use. So let me go back to solid. But to switch between solid and wireframe, just press Z, toggle between Z. Okay, what's next? Okay, some basic things you can do inside object mode. Okay, I already went over selecting object, which is done with the right click. If I want to select multiple objects at once, so let's say I want to select the cube, the lamp, and the camera. Just press Shift, right click. So Shift, right click, and now I have all three of these objects selected. So if I wanted to move all three of these objects using the grab key, I could do it like that. If I wanted to move just the cube and the lamp, I would just select those two objects. And since those are the only two selected, you'll notice the camera doesn't move. So very basic stuff. So I can also duplicate objects. So let's say I want to duplicate this cube. I select the cube or the object that I want to duplicate. and press Shift D and then move it. So I'll go over that again. Shift D for duplicating. Select the object you want to duplicate and just press Shift D. Okay. So let's say I have these two cubes right now. Let's say I want to join them. Right now they're two different objects. Let's say I want to put them into one object. If I want to join these two cubes, these two objects, I click one and then I shift right click the other one and then I press Control J and now they're one object. So I'll go over that again. Right now I just Control Z. Right now there are two different objects. If I want to join them, I right click one object, shift right click the other, Control J, now they're one object. Okay, so now I'm going to get into edit mode. So let's go ahead and start up a new scene. So I'm back to my default scene. I'm going to press Shift Spacebar in this window to focus on this window. I'm going to get rid of the object tool shelf by pressing the T key. Now I'm focusing on this one cube. So everything I've gone over for now has been inside object mode. Now I want to get into edit mode. So to get into edit mode, just press Tab. Alternatively, you can also click edit mode down here and go to edit mode. So in edit mode, you'll see that the cube is different. You'll notice the different vertices. If you press Z, you can switch between wireframe and solid view. If you go to wireframe, you can see the different vertices right here. So let me go ahead and go over the controls, since I'm guessing some people don't know how to do the circle select and border select. So get inside edit mode. The first control I'll be going over is B for border select. So like I said, you'll see these different vertices right here. I can press B and I can select certain vertices. For B for border select, I can highlight several vertices. Everything that's inside that border will be selected. So I just selected those top 4 by creating a border for those 4 vertices. Another thing to point out, right now we're in vertex select mode right here. We can also do edge select. If you want to select the edges, we can also do face select. Typically, I just use vertex select. Sometimes I'll switch between edge and face. Same thing with the manipulators. You can also have multiple ones, multiple options. I can select vertices, edges, and faces all at the same time. In this one, I'll just be doing just vertices. So to reiterate, press B for border select to select the vertices you want inside that border. The other way to select vertices or edges or faces is by circle select. So to do circle select, just press the C key and you'll see this circle come up. And if you're using a 3-button mouse, which you hopefully are, you can use the mouse scroll wheel to make the diameter bigger or smaller. So using this circle select tool, I can select vertices. If I was in edge select mode, I could select edges. If I was in face select mode, I could select faces. Do realize that when you're in border select or circle select mode, you won't be able to move around your scene. You won't be able to rotate. You won't be able to pan. So if you do want to move your scene, get out of circle select or border select by right clicking, move your scene appropriately, and then get back into the appropriate mode, circle select or border select. So the next control is A. A stands for all. So if I want to select all vertices, I can just press A and you'll see all the vertices are selected. If I want to select all edges, go to edge select mode, press A for all. Same thing applies with faces. Okay, scaling. Let's say I want to scale my cube. I would just select the cube. Let's say I want to scale the entire cube. I just press A to select the entire cube. Then I press S, and I can move my mouse in and out to scale it appropriately. So let me go over that again. Select the entire cube, or you can just select the vertices or certain things you want to scale. In this case, I want to scale the entire cube. Just press A to select the entire cube. Press the S key and move my mouse in and out. I can also scale with numbers. I can press S, and if I want to scale it by 2, I can just press the 2 key and it'll scale it by 2. If I want to scale it by 10, I can just press S and then 10, and it'll scale it by 10. So you can scale with the mouse, or you can scale using numbers. Okay, rotating. Rotating is accomplished the same way as rotating is accomplished in object mode. Rotating, you just press the R key. So let's say I want to rotate this entire cube. You just press A to select the entire cube and press R to rotate. Let's say I only want to rotate the top 4 vertices. I'll use circle select, select the top 4 vertices, press R, and I can rotate it. Same thing with scaling. So that was rotating. Now let's go over grabbing. Just like object mode, grabbing is accomplished by using the G key. So let's say I want to move this entire cube. Well, I want to grab this entire cube and move it. Just press A to select the entire cube, then press the G key, then move it with my mouse. So I can also just move certain vertices. So let's say I just want to move this one vertex right here, this one vertex right here. So I'll select it with my circle select tool, press G and then move it. If I want to move the top 4, I'll select the top 4 using the circle select tool, then press the G button and move it. Okay, so now that we're in edit mode, let me go ahead and go over the numpad controls. So because we have the emulate numpad option selected, we can select different keys on the numbers at the top of your keyboard and change the view. So I don't remember these off the top of my head. I don't have them written down anywhere, so I guess I'll just make do. So if I want to go to front view, you press the 1 key. It'll go to the front of the scene. If I want to switch between orthographic and flat view, I press 5. So right now we're in orthographic. We'll go press 5 again, we'll be in flat. If you want to rotate, right now I'm in front view. If I want to rotate around, I just press 6. That'll rotate right. I can press 4. That'll rotate left. I go to orthographic and rotate around to the right. I can also rotate to the left. Get out of orthographic, front view. Let's see. If I want to rotate, I guess that's down. If I want to rotate down, I press 2. Yeah, down. So I'm in orthographic right now, press 5 to get into orthographic, and then you can rotate down with the 2 key. 3 is side view. So right now I'm in front view. I can press 3 for side view. And that's basically the numpad. 7 is for top view. So once you start doing 3D modeling, you'll see how useful it is to emulate the numpad. So now that we've gone over that, let's go over extruding. So extruding, let's say I want to extrude this face right here. I'm basically going to take this face and pull it out, basically. Not like that, but rather take what's already there and bring it out further. So to extrude, just press the E key. Extrude. Let's extrude this face. So select that face and then press the E key, and then just move your mouse. And you'll notice that the original 4 vertices are still there. So that's the big difference between extruding and just grabbing. Right now I'm grabbing, I'm moving those original 4 vertices. With extrude, I keep those 4 vertices, but I basically create copies of those 4 and bring them out. So I can do the same thing with this side. Do the same with the top. Do the same with the bottom. You'll also see these guides. Like the blue line you see right now, that's basically constraining it to the Z-axis. So one nifty thing you can do when you're doing something like this, this also applies to rotating, grabbing, moving, things like that. If I want to constrain it to the X, I can press the X key and it'll constrain movement to the X. You see that red line right there. If I want to constrain it to the Y, I press the Y key, it'll constrain it to the Y. I can constrain it to the Z by pressing the Z key. So X, Y, and Z constrain to those certain axes. So like I said, it also works with movement. So if I want to move the entire object, first I'll select the entire object by pressing A, and then I'll press G to move it. But instead of moving it freely, I'm going to constrain it to, let's say, the X-axis. I'll press the X key, and now it's constrained to the X. If I want to constrain it to the Y, I press the Y key. If I want to constrain it to the Z, I'll press the Z key. So very, very simple, basic stuff. So deleting. Let's say I want to delete these top 4 vertices. Let's go back to my original cube that I had. So let's delete these 4 vertices. I'll use my circle select tool to select the top 4 vertices right here. I'll press X, delete vertices. I can also delete edges, faces, only edges and faces, only faces, but I want to get back to my original cube, so I'm going to go and delete these 4 vertices. I'm going to do the same thing with this side over here. I'll use my circle select tool, select those vertices, press X, delete. So you'll see that I've been going around to select all 4 vertices. But if I was in wireframe mode, because right now I can only see 3 vertices, I can't see that 4th vertex right here. If I was in wireframe mode, by pressing Z, I can see that 4th vertex, and I can actually select it. So while in solid mode, I can't see it. If I was in wireframe mode, I can see it. So let me go and delete those 4. X, vertices, same thing with the bottom. X, circle select, X, vertices. So you'll see that since I extruded it, some of the faces are gone. So to make a face, just select the vertices that you want to create a face, and then press F for face. So F, same thing with this side, F for face, same thing with this side, same thing with the bottom, because you can see it's not there. Use wireframe mode, select the bottom 4, and then press F for face. So now I'm back to my original cube. Okay, so just like in object mode, I can also duplicate objects. So let me select the entire cube by pressing A. Alternatively, you can also press L, as long as your mouse is on that object. So you can press A to select everything, or you can press L on that object. So I want to duplicate it, same thing as object mode, Shift D, it's constrained to the X-axis. I'll put it right next to it. You can also move it by numbers, so let me duplicate that again to illustrate. Constrained to the X. Let's say I want to move it 3 Blender units, I'll just press the 3 key. It went in the direction I didn't want it to go, so I can do -3 by pressing the minus sign right after that, and it'll go in the negative direction. So I can keep doing that. I still have this cube selected. I can do Shift D, grab, Shift D, X, -3. And so now I can continue doing that. Shift D, X, -3. Shift D, X, Shift D, X. Okay, that's not working properly. Let me see what I did. Select the cube, Shift D, X. Let me do 5. 5. Okay, Shift D, X, 5. Shift D, X. Okay, don't press the grab key. Just Shift D, X, 5. Shift D, X, 5. I can also select all of these by pressing the A key, or I can select certain objects, certain meshes with the L key. Let's say I want to duplicate just these. With those selected, I can do Shift D. Let's move it up. Well, in the Y direction, I can press Y, and I can press 5. And also do it on the opposite side by doing Shift D, Y, -10. So very basic stuff. So I want to go back to just having this original cube right here. So let's say I want to select the inverse of what I currently have selected. The inverse of what's currently selected would be all these other cubes. If I want to do that, I just press W for the specials menu, and you can see the different things you can do here. You can experiment with that on your own time. But if I want to select the inverse, I just press W and go to select the inverse. You'll see it selects everything else, and it unselects my original selection. And since I only want to go back to my original cube, I'll press X, delete vertices, and I'm back to my one cube. So let's say we're sick of working with cubes. We can actually add primitive meshes like cylinders, spheres, things of that nature by pressing Shift A, and you'll see this list of objects that you can add. So we can add a plane, cube, circle, UV sphere, icosphere, cylinder, cone, grid, monkey, torus, whatever that is. So let's say I want to add a UV sphere. I can just select UV sphere. It'll add it to wherever the 3D cursor is. This is the 3D cursor. So I'll move that out using the movement manipulator, and you'll see that it adds a sphere. So to illustrate the 3D cursor, if I put my 3D cursor right there, whenever I add a primitive mesh, it'll add it to wherever that 3D cursor is. So Shift A, let's add a icosphere. No, let's add a cylinder. It'll add it wherever that 3D cursor is. So let's say I want to put that 3D cursor in a specific place. What I can do is I can select where I want to put it. So let's say I want to put it on this vertice. I'll select the vertice with my circle select tool, press Shift S, and then cursor to selected. It'll move the cursor to what's selected, which right now is that one vertex on the cube. So now my 3D cursor is right there on that one vertex. So I can add a cube right there. I can keep adding cubes in that same style. So let me delete these two primitives because I have no use for them. So to reiterate, I can move the 3D cursor to wherever I want. Shift S, cursor to selected. Then whatever I add will be added to that cursor. So just like in object mode, if you remember, I told you that the objects have the XYZ, rotation, different scaling. Same thing applies with things inside edit mode. So this one vertex right here, it has an X coordinate, has a Y coordinate, has a Z coordinate. The entire mesh has an XYZ coordinate. You can also move it using the, you can also move it using the manipulator. You can also rotate it, and you can scale it. So that was just an introduction to Blender. That's very basic stuff. I'll be uploading more tutorials later, but hopefully this video helped you kind of understand some of the basic controls and like extruding, duplicating, things like that. Should help you get started with 3D modeling. So stay tuned for more videos, and I guess that's it for now.